a simple video this morning. I put out a post on X, I think it's gone on to Facebook. The title is "Transformation Doesn't Have to Be Painful, but if it is." Let me read what I've written and then just talk a little bit about it, because it's quite important. This transformation for me was not pretty or easy. It wasn't a simple change of thinking or philosophy, or a movement from negative to positive. It was radical, destructive, and painful. It was the blood and guts of me. I was desperate. Everything I stood on went. It was tearing at the fabric of all I had become. All the shadows and the darkness and the anger and the pain. All the self-deception and failure. Everything came pouring out. It took the body, the emotion, the whole of me. Don't tell me you want it easy and you don't understand why it has to be painful. It doesn't. But if it is, it's because you also carry so much baggage and so much shadow and pain. You may have to be radical also, and stop expecting it to be so easy. You may have to die to truly live. You know, in many ways that speaks for itself. It seems, you know, some in many ways have awakening, an easy kind of awakening, maybe. I don't know what really happens for other people so much. But I know, you know, this is my experience. This was, you know, what my transformation kind of looked like. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't easy. It was very much, you know, if you've watched The Matrix, and you see when Neo, you know, leaves the unconscious pod battery thing that he's plugged into, and he falls out of that world, and he has to go on a journey of inner journey of deconstruction, where everything about him, everything about the way he was, is so deeply challenged. It sort of tears him apart. You know, that was my experience. Started at a certain point. I mean, you know, I could even go further, you know, that in retrospect, I can see how the entirety of my life was building to that. I can only see that in retrospect, because in the time when you're in experience itself, it's very hard to have clarity of vision. It's very hard to know where you are in life until you see somehow the pattern in retrospect. That changes, I believe, in presence and in depth. That changes, and you can see much clearer where you are in the scheme of things and in the patterning of your own life, when there's been, you know, what tends to be called an awakening or a deepening or an opening or a removal of the veils. It changes. The way you see your life starts to change. Before that, it's very like this, isn't it? You know, it's very kind of murky, it's very emotional, it's very veiled. You know, it's very, it's got a lot of emotion carried from the past in it. You know, it's got a lot of body stuff in it, the energy system, the body energy system. You know, it's all doing its thing. And these are all sort of multi-layers of us that occlude our vision, our ability to see clearly. And so all of that we've become, the pattern of our life up to a certain point is our Neo in the Matrix moment where unplugging happens. Generally speaking, there can be a vision or an unplugging very quickly, but in a way most people are unplugged gradually. The gradual path, I've talked about the gradual path before, and I will, I think, talk about the gradual path again, because it speaks to most people in a way. People are unplugging kind of gradually, and that has nuances to it. It has problems within it, and it has depth in it, and it has a sort of grounding in reality to it. So it's a sort of double-edged thing that I think I will talk about in a future video, how the the self, if you like, becomes slowly eroded in a good way, but maybe in a painful way over time, interspersed with these sudden realizations and sudden epiphanies. That's what seems to happen for a lot of people. It's certainly what happened for me, and I think that's, remembering the movie of The Matrix, that seems to be what was being alluded to a certain extent in that movie through Neo's experience of unplugging from the Matrix and then waking up to the truth of himself. But it wasn't easy. It was a very painful waking up. He saw things that he didn't like. He saw the horror of the Matrix. He saw he experienced the weakness of himself, and the hijacking of his body by the Matrix. So he had to be kind of reintegrated on so many different levels. He had to. It took time, it took teaching, it took Morpheus to come along and remind him who he really is underneath all the veils. So it is with us. And that was my experience. It was destructive before it was healing. And we don't really want to hear that, because we want the pain to be over, and we want our transition to, awakening to be relatively pain-free. But my friend, it's not usually pain-free, because we carry pain. So the releasing of pain can't just be pain-free. There has to be a meeting place of pain, of the suffering from the past, of the tensions, of the grievances, of the traumas, of the wounds, of the hurts, of the pains. It has to meet the healing. I talked about this in a poem, the rawness that we feel. The rawness when the wound hits the air, comes to consciousness, comes to the light. It seems to hurt even more than keeping it suppressed. But that's not true. It's just that it's the freshness of the wound as it hits the air is raw. It hurts. It really hurts. And the nature of it is to have the courage to persist, even if it feels like there's a demolition, even if it feels like there's a disintegration or a dissolving or a lack of control. So many of us, we're steeped in a hidden control that we exert on every aspect of our lives. It's amazing. It's amazing when you really see it. You're doing this. On the surface it might seem like a different reason, but underneath it's got the agenda of control. Because that's the nature of self, the nature of the ego self, if you like, is to control its environment, quite rightly, because it fears that loss of control is on a certain level death. And so we're all about kind of controlling our environment. And one of the things of coming undone, one of the things of of this dissolving of who we think we are, of who we take ourselves to be, and all of the stuff inside us, is a slow or fast, sudden and slow releasing of that control. And there's part of the rub. You know, it's part of the issue for people is, you know, I don't think I can release control. So we hang on to control even though we want the freedom of falling. We hang on to control, the cliff edge. We're holding on like this. And yet we know instinctively, you know, on a gut level, you know, that we need to kind of let go if we can. I'm not sure whether we have the willpower to do that. But this is not about willpower. This is beyond willpower. This is having enough. I've just had enough of holding on. And something else kind of happens, and there's a release. The release doesn't come from the mind in a way. The release comes from deeper in the soul, deeper in the spirit, deeper in the there's no other way. There's no other way. I had this many times. I have had this many times. I had it when I was ill, very ill, you know, with this autoimmune that happened 20 years ago or so. When I just reached saturation point, I reached I reached the lowest point, one of the lowest points in myself, and I took myself out into the woods. I wasn't going to kill myself, but it kind of felt like that, you know, and I was like, I just, you know, I can't go on, I can't go on, something else needs to happen here. God, I spoke to God. Something else needs to happen here, God. You know, I just need some peace inside me. I was very tormented. You know, when you shake yourself up, you know, it gets worse. Yeah, all the ghouls, all the parasites, all the, you know, everything comes up because the purgation is happening. This is a purgation that I'm kind of talking about, and it happens, and so it's intense. Make no mistake, I'm not talking about an easy path. I'm talking about intensity. And I feel for people who have to go through intensity, but don't back off just because it's intense. So what? Just go with it. Go with it. And I got myself I just lay down. I said, you're going to have to take over, man. You're going to have to take over here because I haven't got this level of control to try and, you know, keep a handle on all of this emotional, mental stuff. Something needs to break free here. And something broke free temporarily, or at least it was a movement of things where I was able to see a little bit clearer that some of this stuff is not in my hands. You know, some of this stuff is just really about ever deeper levels of surrender. Ever deeper surrendering to what is. And that is profoundly sort of difficult for the mind to get its head around, but profoundly beautiful for the soul and the spirit and the heart of us, you know, that wants to ever deepen into the grace of existence. So it's that I'm speaking to, really. So let me just, you see, it was radical, it was destructive and painful. It was the blood and guts of me. And it was, you know. I was a desperate man. Everything I stood on went. It was tearing at the fabric of all I had become. All the shadows and the darkness and the anger and the pain, all the self-deception and failure, everything came pouring out. It's a tough gig, I know, yeah. But you see, my point is, you know, don't tell me you want it easy and you don't understand why it has to be painful, because it doesn't have to be painful. But if it is painful, that's the invitation, because you can fight all you like with the pain, whatever pain, existential, emotional, mental, past, coming up, or again and again and again, and you can fight with it all you like, but, you know, the problem is you'll never win. Never. You may get some relief, you may, you know, procrastinate it, and you may put it off until some future moment, but eventually, you know, life's intelligence will follow you around and it will come to you again. And it comes always with the same invitation. Love me. Surrender. Be kind. Love me. Deepen. Surrender. So if it is, yeah, painful, take heart. That is your path. There is no other path than the path. And that means if that's your path, that's your path. You can't have anybody else's path. Each path is unique and the same. We all walk our own individual, tailor-made path through life. I don't know who created it that way, but it is unique, and somehow I stumbled through grace and whatever else onto my own unique path. And I went with it, and it undid me. But then out of the undoing, my God, there's such a beauty. You know, out of the undone self, there's such an honesty, such a kind of depth to my experience, such a love that I fell into, such a service that I fell into, that I just couldn't see how it could have been any other way. I died, and out of the death there was a rebirth into something more true, something more honest, something more open, something more present, something more, you know, grace-filled, something more divine, something more normal, something more real. All of these qualities happen because I was willing to die. Transformation, it doesn't have to be painful, but if it is, it's calling you. Bless you.